This gray weather is really starting to wear on me a little bit. Seriously, how am I supposed to keep up energy when it's just blah outside? Why, hello everyone, and welcome back to SamCastGS. My room looks so dim right now. Please, can I get some sunshine relatively soon? It's technically spring right now, but because we're in Indiana, we're probably not going to get spring weather for another month or so. Them's the breaks. We're already selling pool items at Meijer though, which is confusing because spring isn't even pool season. The pool season is during the summer when it's hot enough to swim. In the spring, it's still kind of brisk. It might get warmer, but at the same time, water distributes heat differently, so the water's going to be too cold to swim in during the spring. It's not going to be good enough to swim in until the summer, when the difference between the cold and the hot is significant enough that one will be more relieving the water than the heat from the sun. I am slowly degrading in my speech, so we're going to move on to what I wanted to talk about today, which is writing. I know I don't really have a silly thing to talk about today. I've just been thinking about writing a lot lately because I am myself writing a book, which you might say is a great ambition if it weren't for the fact that I've been writing it for the better part of like 12 years. I say writing, but most of that has been me developing the story and the characters and everything right up here, and it's all in my head, ready to be written, for the most part, still kind of developing things, but it is here, and I just need to write it down. I think the biggest obstacle I have is the fact that it's never going to be on paper the way it is in my head. I'm also a major perfectionist, so when I'm writing a sentence, I'll be like, no, I don't like that, no, I don't like that, no, I don't like that, and I'll spend like an hour just constructing one sentence, and it makes it hard to make any progress whatsoever. A tip that I received from my art appreciation teacher back when I was still at Ivy Tech was to bring up the program that I use. By the way, I use a program called Scrivener. It's really, really awesome. It's specifically designed for book writing, and you can divide things up into like books, chapters, scenes within chapters. It's really cool. I highly recommend it if you're planning to write a book or make a comic or anything like that, any kind of story writing. Then I highly recommend using Scrivener. It's freaking awesome. Obviously, I am not being sponsored by Scrivener because, So she suggested that I bring up Scrivener, set my cursor, and then tilt my computer screen down so I can't see what I'm typing as I type. Then I can bring it back up later, see the horrible typos, fix those, and then I can edit. That's the thing that I just can't register properly in my head. I can always go back and edit. I feel like all writers are at least a little hypercritical of their writing. I mean, let's be honest. It's weird though, because I do write very often. I'm on this role-playing website called Gaia, and there are a whole bunch of forums, and then you get together with people, make characters, and you just kind of go back and forth and write a story. I think a lot of the difference is when you're writing with other people as opposed to writing on your own. That being said, I am writing alongside my buddy Ian. We're writing parallel stories, and that really helps. Like, to have somebody that you can discuss ideas with, develop characters and connections, it really helps with the world building process. But even so, whenever I sit down to write it, I kind of freeze up in my head, and I don't know what to write or where to start, because it's so much information. And the solution there, if you are writing or just developing any kind of story, just break it up into smaller pieces, which is why Scrivener is awesome, because you can split it up into chapters and then scenes within those chapters. You have to start somewhere. Look at me giving advice like I'm an actual writer who is published works. I'm not. But after 12 years of developing a story, I'd say that I know a little bit, enough to pass on some tips and tricks. But don't try to take on the entire story at once. You might have it all in your head. Heck, I have the ending of the story. I have like all the major plot points, but the problem is the stuff in between. And when I try to think of all that at once, I never get anywhere. You basically have to start at one point and see how the story develops. No matter how much you want the story to follow this specific progression of plot points, it's important to be flexible enough that when you're writing, you're not constrained by those plot points. You're willing to change them as the story progresses, because it's going to, inevitably, when you're writing and developing the characters, developing the story, it is going to change the way the story unfolds. You can have a basic blueprint. That's nothing wrong with that. I have a blueprint for how I want the story to go. Major events that will inevitably come to pass. I keep repeating words at this point. My last SamCastGS was about word choice. My buddy Ian suggested that the first book should be a lot of world building, because that's generally what the first book is. Obviously have some conflict and character development and all that stuff, but don't try to get into the story right off the bat, because you're going to rush yourself and then you're going to run into problems of pacing and not really knowing where to go, and before you know it, you don't have enough for the full story, and it doesn't make a lot of sense because there's a lot of details missing that would propel the story forward. It is a time-consuming process. It really is. On that note, there is no shame in asking for help. It's totally acceptable to ask for advice, do research, talk to other people, build off the resources that you have access to. That's why they're there. Not to say that the people you love are only there to fuel your writing progress. They are there for much more than that, but they can be a very helpful resource. And my last piece of advice is something I actually received from my cousin, who writes a fair deal and he writes screenplays and stuff like that. Never write when you just don't feel like it. That's not to say put it off until you suddenly have this dramatic urge to write, because to be honest, if you just wait around to feel like doing something, it's probably not going to happen very often. Writing is hard. It really is. Pulling your hair out in frustration is kind of part of the process. So there's going to be times when you just never feel like writing, and those are the times that you have to force yourself to sit down and at least try. If you're really not feeling it, then, back up a little bit. If you don't give yourself opportunities to write, those opportunities are not going to arise for you, and you'll end up sitting around just thinking about it like I have for the past 11 to 12 years. So don't try to take on everything at once. Find a place to start. Be flexible with your plot. Don't be ashamed to ask for help. Never write when you're really not feeling it, but create your own opportunities to write. Provide yourself with the time and the space to do so. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen. And with that, we're going to move on to the dinosaur of the day, because I've been talking for a while and I don't want to make this video super duper looper long. Here we are, Herrerasaurus, otherwise known as Herrera reptile. Yeah, that helps. That's really specific. It doesn't have like Sauricia or anything like that. So let's just move on. Among the oldest dinosaurs yet discovered, Herrerasaurus is thought to have been one of the few known ancestors of both Ornithischian and Saurissian dinosaurs. It would have shared its range with primitive reptile relatives of both dinosaurs and mammals, which did not survive the end of the Triassic period. That's sad. A lightweight dinosaur, Herrerasaurus wouldn't have been able to tackle very large prey, but its sickle-shaped teeth were clearly designed for eating meat. This is a really short entry. Physically 10 feet long. Wait a second, it's 10 feet long, but it wouldn't be able to tackle very large prey? I guess 10 feet, but lightweight, 220 pounds, stockily built. That doesn't seem lightweight. Long hind limbs, substantially shorter forelimbs, and a structure of backbone surprisingly similar to those of much more advanced theropods. Also cites Argentina and geologic age late Triassic. So that's it for Herrerasaurus. That was a little underwhelming. Hold on, I'm gonna look up what Herrera means. Herrerasaurus was one of the earliest dinosaurs, so that was accurate. Its name means Herrera's lizard, after the rancher who discovered the first specimen. Alright, so Herrera reptile, it's Herrera's. Does he own it? Does he own the reptile? Anyway, next we have Heterodontosaurus, and it has a lot more information, so that will probably be a bit more substantial than today's dinosaur of the day. We'll have to get to that next week. Thanks for tuning in. If you would like to subscribe, there's a link to my channel in the description as always. Also, make sure you click the bell icon. That will notify you when I make new videos. And of course, check out the Facebook page where I post updates, and I will also post the videos there. Thanks for tuning in. Keep on cruising, my friends. Goodbye.